Hi, everyone. This is Jeff Prasen with Interactive Brokers Podcast. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast studio Scott Bauer from Prosper Trading Academy. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Jeff, I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Always love to see you on these Wednesday mornings when we talk about the market. And let's not waste any time. Let's start with what's on everyone's mind. What companies or sectors have been, let's say, most negatively and positively affected about the, by the current Iran conflict.
Sure. I mean, obviously, energy, right away. Energy was hot. We saw oil stocks rally. We saw, producers rally. Anything related to energy, especially natural gas. Right now, that's cooled a little bit, and that kind of ebbs and flows a bit with what the news rhetoric is coming out on. How deep or the conflict is, or maybe there's talks, but that certainly has been front and center. Some of the tech stocks that we had seen actually that have been battered over the last several weeks and even months. I don't want to say we're seeing a bottoming out, but there's definitely been some buying in some of those. The banks have been under pressure, though we saw a little bit of a nice rally over the last couple of days. But overall, the banks have been under some pressure.
And, how are the, European and Asian markets reacting to this conflict, or are they not at all?
Sure. So the Asian markets absolutely got pummeled. We saw some pretty record breaking losses there, especially in South Korea. A lot of that is just based on inflation shock, just because of oil prices. Um, pretty similar in Europe, though not quite as bad as what we saw in Asia. I think everybody is really on the defensive right now. But to me, Asia really hit it, got hit harder because of the massive run up that we had seen prior to this conflict.
Yeah, and I think to kind of pivot away from the conflict right now, and let's talk about some economic indicators. What were some of the market movers last week?
Well, we had some inflation data, and this week we have the jobs number on Friday, but last week we saw inflation data and some manufacturing data that I think was actually fairly positive for the markets. Now, positive, what does that mean? Does that mean that's better for the markets going higher, better for the economy? That's up to people's interpretation. But I think what we have seen is that the economy is on fairly steady footing here.
Hmm.
This week, I think the big number is going to be this jobs number, and how does that fit into the grand scenario of the weakness that we have seen in the labor market recently? Is that going to continue?
Yeah, and besides the the jobless claims, we also have like the Fed beige book coming out. We have existing home sales, and some other, maybe small reports. Yeah, you already mentioned that, you think the jobless claims is going
Yep.
to be the big one. Anything else that might, maybe with like a surprise cause movement either positively or negatively?
I think beige book can.
Mhm.
Beige book can definitely play into the Fed's thinking, the Fed's decision making. There's been a little bit more consternation about whether there is going to be a move in March or not. I mean, most likely it's still no. But that has been onto the table. But given some of the strong data that we have seen outside of the jobs numbers are here, that does probably does not bode well for the Fed cutting.
Gotcha. And I got to end it on our favorite topic, the VIX,
Uh,
which is trading above 20. Does this continue to climb, or stay steady, or do you think it kind of comes off a little bit?
sure, we finally saw a real pop in the VIX
Right.
up to high 20s, up to 28 or so, where we had seen recently, a pop was like to 22,
Right.
23 or so. But we saw it come back down pretty quickly. I think it's real difficult to remain at those levels. I really do. The market has been incredibly resilient. And I don't think we're going to see that high 20s number, and especially a three handle on the VIX. But what is the norm over time, seeing a VIX kind of in the mid-teens. I don't know that we're going to get back there anytime soon.
Guys, this might be the new normal, at least for the
At least for
not too distant future or whatever.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Scott, this has been great as always. For our listeners, you can find more from Scott at Prosper Trading Academy. Also on our website, go to IBKR.com, click on education. You can find past podcasts, past webinars, and always a pleasure to have you in the studio, Scott.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
The analysis in this material is provided for information only and is not and should not be construed as an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy any security. To the extent that this material discusses general market activity, industry, or sector trends, or other broad-based economic or political conditions, it should not be construed as research or investment advice. To the extent that it includes references to specific securities, commodities, currencies, or other instruments, those references do not constitute a recommendation by IBKR to buy, sell, or hold such investments. This material does not and is not intended to take into account the particular financial conditions, investment objectives, or requirements of individual customers. Before acting on this material, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular circumstances and, as necessary, seek professional advice.